I'm David Lombardo, and you're listening to WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're revisiting the state legislative push to utilize psilocybin, one of the active ingredients in magic mushrooms, as an alternative treatment for certain mental health conditions. A bill authorizing psilocybin to be used for treating depression, PTSD, substance use disorders, and cluster headaches was amended earlier this month. So we're checking in with a major legislative champion of this effort, Assemblyman Pat Burke, a Buffalo area Democrat. So the legislation I mentioned at the top from the Assembly Health Committee chair is supposed to establish a regulated framework for ensuring medicinal access to psilocybin, which is best known for its connection to magic mushrooms. According to your colleague, her proposal, though, has undergone some major changes since the legislative hearing that you helped make happen back in 2025. What are your thoughts on the direction of this bill, which is creating a program that would be administered by the state health department?
It's not ready for prime time. I would love it to be the case. We've done a lot of work to get this point. It's been nearly 5 years of work. I know it's not ready for prime time because Pollen's version of the bill is a bill that I drafted. And, about 5 years ago, we've done a lot of work to shift and to get us to a point where we could get something done. But this is so expansive, and we know what happened and with OCM and the disaster that it was and the pushback. There is not really a broad coalition for a policy like this yet. It's kind of where you'd like to get to in the end. So I just don't want us to miss opportunities to get something going that could be impactful and target groups that really need help right now, rather than, doing what we often do, which is kind of create this bureaucracy. It's bulky. It gets messy. We saw what happened with OCM.
The Office of Cannabis Management, for listeners.
Yeah.
And so the legislation, as described by Assemblymember Amy Pollen, the Health Committee chair, would license healthcare providers, and they would be authorized to evaluate patients, determine eligibility, provide guidance on appropriate uses of psilocybin. A program would initially focus on veterans, first responders, other individuals suffering from major treatment-resistant forms of some of the conditions I mentioned at the top. You made the argument, though, that this is almost too expansive.
Yep.
So what do you think is the appropriate approach when it comes to, I guess, walking before you run?
Right. And that's why that's why we shifted our focus to a pilot program. So expand what's already happening in the state. There are, health centers and university centers that are already doing research and that are providing, psilocybin-assisted therapy. And now there is a $50 million fund from the federal government that is looking to assist and match, investments from various states to do research and to expand their programming. That's what I think we should be doing. We should utilize what's already existing and expand on it right now, rather than trying to do the big quagmire swing. And we know that it just takes a really long time to get any of these things done, right? And so that type of expansive program is very unlikely to get done in this legislative session, or maybe even the next legislative session. Like, we should be progressively building up towards that and getting the data, getting the information we need, expanding as much as we can right now to help people as soon as we can. One of the big problems that we moved off of, the bill that Pollen has right now is started essentially as a carbon copy of my original bill. And there's been some shifts. One of the things that we shifted off of was conditions. Like, naming conditions becomes an incredible challenge. Like, oh, you can do it for this, but not for this.
And that was the model of how medical marijuana rolled out more than a decade ago in a very limited fashion, and was one of the complaints about it, was how restrictive it was.
Right, exactly. And so it's not helpful, and it overcomplicates it, and you're not going to build a coalition around it. Maybe you'll get the people who have this condition, and then you lose everyone who has that condition. Like specifically naming them is problematic. And so identifying groups and people, so veterans, first responders, and maybe a broader health sense, but leaving it to the Department of Health to create rules and regs, and then leaving it to these health centers that are already doing this. They're just doing it in a very limited capacity. So if we expand it, which the pilot bill that I have expands the program, it's already set up. So there's already an infrastructure. We don't need to create a whole new infrastructure right now. And we're probably not going to, right? Like, people feel very burned by us building a bureaucracy around cannabis and how messy that was. I don't know if they're ready to do that in 2026.
The idea of a pilot, when people hear that terminology, it's usually for something where you're trying to test it out, or maybe you're not 100% sold on what you're looking to do. When you think about the rationale for a pilot, is part of this because you want more data on how psilocybin could be used or its effectiveness, or are you already sort of a believer in that element of things and you just are concerned about the rollout and implementation of something that would utilize psilocybin for mental health purposes?
Full believer in its effectiveness. I don't think it's up for debate, but the money that's coming from the feds, the $50 million that's going to be made available for matching, is to do research. But research, we still have to collect more data. Like, it just has not been, there's just not enough of it. And so we need to do research, but this will also expand these programs for people who do need it and can be available for that research. It's also incredibly expensive if you're not, like, if you're paying out of pocket. And the process is, you take psilocybin, it's in your system for 5 hours, 6 hours. A therapist has to sit with you that whole time. So their labor, and then usually you need 2 people because you're vulnerable, right? Like, if someone's vulnerable on this medication and they're talking about, deep introspective things, whatever they're doing, they're pretty well exposed. And so, like, you do kind of need a check on the therapist, because not all therapists are created equal. Some everywhere, like, there's, where you find vulnerable people, you also find predatory people. So you need a system that protects from that. So you have at least 2 people that are participating for this long period, like 2 professionals participating for a long period of time. They have to get paid if there's follow-up. So it tends to be expensive if you're doing it right. And so creating a fund that removes cost as a major barrier is also something that is in the pilot bill, and then is also what takes advantage of matching dollars from the feds. And there are just, the Cohen Foundation, there are other programs that want to invest in this type of research as well.
In addition to the $50 million for those federal-state collaborations that the Trump administration has advanced, there's also this broader executive order, which is supposed to, quote, dramatically accelerate access to new medical research and treatments based on psychedelic drugs. There has been some questions, though, about what the actual language will mean for, say, the FDA and their review of psychedelic compounds more broadly. Have we seen anything that you've thought was substantive in the last month since this EO, or is it still kind of an ambiguous area in terms of what the Trump administration and Federal Food and Drug Administration officials are actually going to do in this area?
No, it's still ambiguous to me, and I haven't seen anything clear. The president often makes all sorts of declarations. He says things sometimes. He just says things, and it pisses me off that somehow, Donald Trump is ahead of the game, on this compared to the state of New York. For working on this for as long as I have, it's disappointing that we're not further along. And, Republican states, red states, very, I don't know how to describe. I don't need to be diplomatic about Donald Trump. Someone like Donald Trump, can read what's happening and say, yeah, we need to do this, or whoever he talked to. Joe Rogan, or who I don't know the genesis of how he got there, but it's become quite a bipartisan issue because of veterans, I think, and I think that's the strength in this, and that's what we should lean into here too.
Well, then, would you want to see at the state executive level, would you want to see Governor Kathy Hochul champion something like this? I mean, in order for it to actually get across the finish line, so to speak, do we need to see it in a budget bill, for example, championed by the governor, say, in 2027?
I mean, that would be great. I tried to do it in 2026 and we didn't get there. That would be, absolutely. I would take that as long as we have an on-time budget.
What if it was late because she said we need to secure the Pat Burke pilot project for psilocybin?
It doesn't need to be the Pat Burke pilot project, but yeah.
I was just trying to do a lot of P's in there.
Yeah. Let's do the thing. How late are we talking? We don't need to jam policy through the budget all the time. We can also just pass something like this, and there is a set aside already in the budget for emerging medications and medicines. So I think that would cover it anyway because it's broad enough. But we need to get this policy done.
But I guess having the governor's sort of bully pulpit behind something could be effective. We saw with the legalization of marijuana, even though Cuomo, the former governor, wasn't a big champion of the issue, he did help move it along by advancing a Department of Health study that said the pros sort of outweigh the cons with legalization, and maybe that gave some people cover. So it seems like the governor could play a meaningful role.
Listen, my argument for this, aside from all of its actual benefits, like just politically, when I started doing this, many of my colleagues were like, dude, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Like, this is crazy, and you're going to lose because of something like this. To where it is now, when it was polled to see if I was, I was vulnerable for it, it was the top polling issue. Like, it was the strongest thing, the most bipartisan support from both sides of the aisle. And so it made a political argument for the governor that this is great for you. But, we got a lot done this budget cycle, and there'll be another one. There'll be another session, and hopefully we'll get it done the next one.
Does there seem to be, at least from your perspective, whether it's polling or just anecdotally talking to people, awareness about psilocybin and its potential medical benefits?
Yeah, there was like not weird, but like kind of like a mushroom craze, not even magic mushrooms. Have you noticed that? Like, adaptogenic mushrooms, people are talking about lion's mane, all this stuff. And then there's like TV shows about it, and these cordyceps mushrooms, or what's that HBO show?
The Last of Us.
Yeah, The Last of Us.
Yeah, we want to avoid that.
I stopped watching once they killed off.
No spoilers here. No spoilers here.
It's been out forever.
No spoilers here.
All right. Well, like 50% of the viewers stopped watching at the end of the first season. But okay. So I think there is a general awareness of the benefits, and the time is well past to get it done. And like, if we could pull something off this session, that would be awesome. And I'd be really excited to do that. And I'm trying, but we'll see. There's now quite a few bills that have, at a space I started in where there were very few, now it has become kind of a congested area.
Well, we've been speaking with Assemblymember Pat Burke, a Buffalo area Democrat. Assemblymember, thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell & Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.